Skellig, Chapter 1. I found him in the garage on a Sunday afternoon. It was the day after we moved into Falconer Road. The winter was ending. Mum had said we'd been moving just in time for the spring. Nobody else was there, just me. The others were inside the house with Dr. Death, worrying about the baby. He was lying there in the darkness, behind the tea chest, in the dust and dirt. It was as if he'd been there forever. He was filthy and pale and dried out, and I thought he was dead. I couldn't have been more wrong. I'd soon begin to see the truth about him, that there'd never been another creature like him in the world. We called it the garage, because that's what the estate agent Mr. Stone called it. It was more like a demolition site or a rubbish dump, or like one of those ancient warehouses they kept pulling down at the quay. Stone led us down the garden, took the door open, and shone his little torch into the gloom. We shoved our heads in at the doorway with him. "You have to see it within your mind's eye," he said. "See it cleaned, with the new doors and roof repaired. See it as a wonderful 2-car garage." He looked at me with a stupid grin on his face. "Or something for you, lad. A hideaway for you and your mates. What about that, eh?" I looked away. I didn't want anything to do with him. All the way round the eyes, it had been the same. Just see it. Just see it. Just see it in your mind's eye. Just imagine what could be done. All the way round I kept thinking of the old man, Ernie Myers, that had lived here on his own for years. He'd been dead nearly a week before they found him under the table in the kitchen. That's what I saw when Stone told us about it, seeing with the mind's eye. He even said when we got into the dining room, and there was an old cracked toilet sitting there in the corner behind a plywood screen. I just wanted him to shut up, but he whispered that towards the end, Ernie couldn't manage the stairs. His bed was brought in here, and a toilet was put in, so everything was easy for him. Stone looked at me like he didn't think I should know about such things. I wanted to get out, to get back to our old house again, but Mum and Dad took it all in. They went on it like it was about to go to some big adventure. They brought the new house. They started cleaning it and scrubbing it and painting it. Then the baby came too, early. And here we are. Chapter 2. I nearly got into the garage that Sunday morning. I took my own torch and shone it in. The outside doors to the back lane must have fallen off years ago, and there were dozens of massive planks nailed across the entrance. The timbers holding the roof were rotten, and the roof was sagging in. The bits of the floor you could see between the rubbish were full of cracks and holes. The people that took the rubbish out of the house were supposed to take it out of the garage as well, but they took one look at the place and said they wouldn't go in, even for danger money. There were old chests of drawers and broken wash basins and bags of cement, ancient doors leaning against the walls, deck chairs with cloth seats rotted away, great rolls of rope and cable hung from nails, heaps of water pipes and great boxes of rusty nails were scattered on the floor. Everything was covered in dust and spider webs. There was mortar that had fallen from the walls. There was a little window in one of the walls, but it was filthy, and there were rolls of cracked lino standing in front of it. The place stank of rot and dust. Even the bricks were crumbling like they couldn't bear the weight anymore. It was like the whole thing was sick of itself and would collapse in a heap and have to get bulldozed away. I heard something scratching in one of the corners and something scuttling about. Then it all stopped and it was just dead quiet in there. I stood daring myself to go in. I was just going to slip inside when I heard Mum shouting at me, "Michael, what are you doing?" She was at the back door. "Didn't we tell you to wait till we're sure it's safe?" I stepped back and looked at her. "Well, didn't we?" she shouted. "Yes," I said. "So keep out, all right?" I shoved the door and it lurched half shut on its single hinge. "All right," she yelled. "All right," I said. "Yes, all right, all right. Do you not think we've got more to worry about? That stupid you've getting crushed in the stupid garage?" "Yes." "You just keep right out then. Right. Then I went back into the wilderness. We called the garden and she went back to the flaming baby. Chapter 3. The garden was another place that we supposed to be wonderful. There were going to be benches and a table and a swing. There was going to be a goal post painted on one of the walls by the house. There was going to be a pond with fish and frogs in it. But there was none of that. There were just nettles and thistles and weeds and half-bricks and lumps of stone. I stood there, kicking the heads off a million dandelions. After a while, Mum shouted, was I coming in for lunch? And I said no. I was staying out in the garden. She brought me a sandwich and a can of Coke. "Sorry, it's all so rotten, and we're all in such rotten moods," she said. She touched my arm. "You understand, though, don't you, Michael? Don't you?" I shrugged. "Yes," I said. She touched me again and sighed. "It'll be great again when everything's sorted out," she said. I sat on a pile of bricks against the house walls. I ate the sandwich and drank the Coke. I thought of Random Road where we'd come from, and all the mates like Leaky and Cute. They'd be up on the top field now, playing a match that had lasted all day. Then I heard the doorbell ringing and heard Dr. Death coming in. I called him Dr. Death because his face was grey and there was many black spots on his hands, and he didn't know how to smile. I'd seen him lighting up a fag in his car, one as he drove away from our door. They told me to call him Dr. Dan, and I did when I had to speak to him. But inside he was Dr. Death to me, and it fitted him much better. I finished the Coke, waited a minute, then I went down to the garage again. I didn't have much time to dare myself or to stand there listening to the scratching. I switched the torch on, took a deep breath and tiptoed straight inside. Something little and black scuttled across the floor. The door creaked and cracked for a long moment before it was still. Dust poured through the torch beam. Something scratched and scratched in a corner. I tiptoed further in, and felt spider webs breaking on my brow. Everything was packed in tight. Ancient furniture, kitchen units, rolled up carpets, piled pipes and crates and plants. I kept ducking down under the hose pipes and ropes and kit bags that hung from the roof. More pipes and ropes, more cobwebs snapped on my clothes and skin. The floor was broken and crumbly. I opened the cupboard, an inch shone the torch in, and saw a million wood lice scattering away. I peered down into a great stone jar and saw the bones of some little animals that had died in there. Dead blue bottles were everywhere. There were ancient newspapers and magazines. I shone the torch on to one and saw that it came from nearly 50 years ago. I moved so carefully. I was scared every moment that the whole thing was going to collapse. There was dust clogging my throat and nose. I knew they'd be yelling for me soon, and I knew I'd better get out. I leaned across a heap of tea chests and shone the torch into a space behind, and that's when I saw him. I thought he was dead. He was sitting with his legs stretched out and his head tipped back against the walls. He was covered in dust and webs like everything else, and his hair was thin and pale. Dead blue bottles were scattered all on his hair and shoulders. I shone the torch on his white face and his black suit. "What do you want?" he said. He opened his eyes and looked up at me. His voice squeaked like he hadn't used it in years. "What do you want?" My dear, my heart thudded and thundered. I said, "What do you want?" Then I heard them yelling for me from the house. "Michael! Michael! Michael!" I shuffled out again. I backed out through the door. It was Dad. He came down the path to me. "Didn't we tell you?" he started. "Yes," I said. "Yes, yes." I started to brush the dust off myself. A spider dropped away from my chin on a long string. He put his arm around me. "It's for your own good," he said. He picked a dead blue bottle out of my hair. He thumped the side of the garage, and the whole shuddered. "See," he said. "Imagine what might happen." I grabbed his arm to stop him thumping it again. "Don't," I said. "It's all right. I understand." He squeezed my shoulder and said everything would be better soon. He laughed. "Get all that dust off before your mother sees, eh?"